So when your mom and you started out and you were going to breed, you hope everybody has a vision. So think about and talk about what was that vision, because you obviously had one. Looking at where you are now, you don't get it stumbling through the forest.
Yeah.
What was that vision? And tell us how you got there.
What's the challenge of breeding to you?
Perfection. Well, perfection can be, that kind of aim can be depressing sometimes. But if I had to sum it up, we do have an ideal type in mind, and we select and make our breeding plans according to that elusive mental image.
My vision is to see that one of a Collie, first of all, being part of people's lives. That's the primary. How they interact with us, how they change our lives is what it's about for me. And depending on the person's interests, different interests, that can take many different forms. So I try to listen very carefully to what people are looking for and what their personal goals are with their goals, and we try to keep that in mind in helping them, matching them with a puppy. My ideal is not an individual that may have a stronger look as, say, the Marnus family, because I'm selecting on a broad range of criteria. I want the dog to have a certain kind of personality, outgoing personality, a calm personality, perspective about the world, that they're safe wherever they go, and that going with their person and doing something with a person has a high priority to them. Pleasing people has a high priority to them. So there is that piece that's very important. There's the piece about harmony that we talked about earlier that's very important for me. I want to keep dogs in the breeding program that are harmonious and have that quality physically, combined with what I've described in personality.
Right.
So that's sort of what I would hope would be the hallmark of a Kings Valley dog. May not have a particular, I might do on the eye shape a little bit, or the ear set a little bit. And since I've been doing the training of the mobility dogs, I've given on ear set, and I've placed several mobility dogs that have high tail carriage. But what matters is, can they do the work?
Can they do the work?
And can they have longevity in the work? And so it's not, I mean, I feel that every breeder, you talked about mentoring, I think every breeder should explore for themselves what is their criteria. What is really most important to them when they're no longer in Collies? What is their legacy been? What have they left behind? And if that's their picture, if that they have that image in mind, then that's what they'll breed for, and it will be consistent. I think that's really the best answer. I think in the early years when we were showing a lot, the criteria that the judges said had to be our criteria, and if there was a scale, we had to make that higher, more weight on that part in order to finish the champions that we needed to. And now I'm showing more international shows, and there's a broader criteria there among the judges, though many of them are American judges. They also may come from Canada or Mexico or other countries. And they give written critiques, and I find the written reports very helpful, not just for me to learn from, but also in placing dogs as mobility dogs. I have something tangible to share with people about how their dog functions in their conformation, because they talk about movement and body structure more than we talk about it at the AKC shows. So, I mean, we talk about it as breeders, but I don't get to talk to the judges about it. But
right.
At the international shows, you actually can talk to the judges about it. And I like that also. So, and I'm kind of curious how my colleagues would do. What would they do in Italy at a show or in Germany at a show? Eva and I had the opportunity to export some dogs to Germany many, many years ago. And it was very interesting because at the time the German collies did not have strong temperaments. Mm-hmm. And the American collies were really a breath of fresh air. They were very different and very new at the time. And they blended with the German families of collies. And several different breeders did these blends. And now, so many years later, 20 years later, I'm seeing the results of those breeders, their work, and bringing those different branches of the family back together again, and still finding that they have working personalities, and their dogs are doing rappelling out of helicopters for medical rescue, and I mean coaching behind horse-drawn coaches. Really interesting, fun, different, new activities. And anyway, that was
the
really
standard. The collie is supposed to be a working, thinking dog, and this
and really versatile. Yeah.
They are doing what they should do.
Yeah, it was interesting though to see that the way the families could blend and how what endurance that has after all those years. Right. It was very interesting.
If it's genetically written, it's there. So what motivates you?
Well, I think my motivation in the beginning was to, have a success in the show rate, to have consistency that way. And we started with smooths. After, 10 or more years with just smooths, we really loved the roughs and we wanted to do well with roughs. So then our motivation changed, and we got a foundation bitch from Sandy Tuttle with Arrowhill breeding. Arrowhill Kings Valley Event was her name. And she never won in the showing, but she was a very good foundation bitch. And we started with roughs, and then so for a time roughs became our focus. And not just the coat, but could we do all the things with the roughs that we were doing with the smooths? Could we get those same qualities? And we were finding before we started with the foundation rough that in the rough and smooth combined litters, the smooths were getting the qualities. So we went to all rough for a while. Now I'm 64 and I live in this, 12 acres here. I live in the kennel with the dogs, and they're surrounded by 12 acres of fields. And they live in social groups, and they run and play in the fields. And it's my job to keep the fields in shape for them. And so, there's such so much mowing and weed whacking, and now I don't use any chemicals, so we use Epsom soap, soap and vinegar on the pen size, but it's like a constant battle. Right. And I really want to spend my time training the dogs and doing things with them, not with the land. And I find it's hard to get people that are really consistent to help me. So, at one point this past year I had 10 roughs here, and I realized that's too much. A lot of my clients want roughs that are mobility dogs, but I'm going to try to convince them that smooths really have a lot to offer. All the joys of roughs, but half the work, that kind of thing. We were pretty good at those kinds of slogans in the early years, and I have to look at my old ads and
bring those up.
Bring those back, yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, that's so now priorities. Back to your question about motivation. Now my motivation is to create the success that I've had with the mobility dogs and roughs with smooths. And so I'm breeding and selecting for smooths with those qualities. Smooths historically have been bred for more drive, and they're more verbal, and they're more assertive, because the old-time shepherds needed dogs that could push the sheep. Now, having had sheep for 30 years, I know they're very fragile. And if they had a dog that would grab them, they would just, again, they would just die right there. They don't survive if they're injured. So the shepherds of old were very good at selecting dogs that turned out to be of the smooth variety, that were forceful, but verbally so, not with their teeth. They had great inhibitions about grabbing, which we saw was very helpful here when we were moving our own sheep. They were gentle. They moved them with their body, and they were loving with them and caring for them. And I love that. So what I would like to see, the roughs in those days were selected for a gentler nature. They were a little bit slower. They worked along the back end of the flock and kept the babies collected up with the mothers so that they wouldn't get straggled behind and get picked off. And so that, those qualities are very useful in the service world. And I want to get a line of smooths developed now that have all of those qualities that the rough working dogs have, but use the assertiveness to be caretakers for their partners.
Walk in so she can't cut in. Back away so she's looking to me. Step away so she can get around. Step away so she can get around. We get things straightened out and back straight away. Let her go around. Don't fight with her. Then walk away. Sit. Walk away this way. Let her go around. Don't keep moving. She goes around. Back away. See how she's just holding him to me? Go this way. Let her get around. I'm not chasing her away as far as me. I'm just adjusting. So that can't get her. Look, she's not splitting. Perfect balance. Encourage her. She was intimidated. Good, Sid. There we've got a nice recovery. Look at her balance a bit. Now we'll work the fences a bit. Get her back. She's lost sheep. Hold her responsible. She's got her sheep back together. She's got a little rash. Sid. When I say her name, things are escaping. That means she's get on the ball. Come on, Sid. In between me, she did anyway. Readjusted so she doesn't get to the next one. There we go. There, she's just holding sheep to me in a nice straight line. That's what you're working for. And we keep it moving. Sit. So that we don't bore her.
I just want to digress a little bit here with one quick story about a smooth that's a mobility dog. And his partner has cerebellar ataxia. So her brain affects her mobility. And the dogs are all taught to meet a certain criteria in training and in performance before they graduate. And so he knew very well. Now, this story takes place during his team training time, which is a time when my clients come to Corvallis and they work with me for 2 weeks. Every day we work together, one-on-one. Just them, their dog, and I. We go all around town. We do all the kinds of things that they want to do when they go home. And I sort of tag along and coach them. And so on this day, I let people make mistakes so that they can get themselves out of it, so that they can learn to work with their dogs. And the Collies are such great problem solvers that they usually fix it.
Fix it.
Yeah, so I can trust
I'll
them.
help you.
I'll help you, yes. I won't let anything really
Right.
bad happen, but whoops, this was a mistake. And that's how they teach people. So I watched this dog. He's a beautiful, smooth collie, and he was at the top of a staircase with his partner, Shelley. And Shelley started down the staircase easy. He takes a step, and she takes a step, and he can sense that she's tipping forward, and he knows that there's too much weight for him to catch her, and so he doesn't want her to continue. So she's in the middle of the staircase of 4 steps, and he sits, butt on the upper step and front feet on the lower step, and he just stops her there. And she's like, now what do I do? Like, I can't go up, backwards, I can't go down, what do I do? And he's not moving. So I said, well, release the handle of the harness and put both hands on the railing and move down the steps safely. And when you get to the bottom, he'll be there with you again. And so that's what she did. And she got down the steps, and immediately he was beside her, and he was ready to go on the flat surface with her. This we can do together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was so sweet how he helped her through that. And now she knew, after that experience, what would be too much for her.
Yeah. Then.
Exactly.
Now.
Exactly. And so that's what I'm looking for in Smooth, is that kind of generous spirit, willing to give of themselves to teach, and still eager to work the next step. Okay, we can do this, let's go.
Right.
You know?
I've got your back.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. And they are capable of that, and I think they're also capable. We have an amazing breed. People, I know some breeders that are breeding for agility dogs specifically, high drive, high energy. But that's not my criteria. So I guess the answer to the question is to know, for breeders to know what their goals are and what they're selecting for at any particular time. And it does change, not just as our intentional criteria changes, but also as our eyes develop and we see better. Mom said once that in the early days we didn't notice big feet in our dogs until the judge said something about, boy, they have big feet. And then we came home and we looked at all the dogs. Yeah, there are a lot of them with big feet. We have to pay attention to that. We didn't see it, you know.
Right, you didn't.
So you know, talking and sharing with other breeders is a great way to see through their eyes your own dogs, and that's really helpful.
And see what he does. And then call him down, come forward to the end of the railing, call him down, say, okay. Say, okay. There you go. And now put your hand back. He's turning in front of you because he feels you leaning forward. So you turn to your right and let him wrap around you so he knows he can support you. That's perfect. Very good. Tell him what you want. You're coming this direction. Good. Very good. Very good. That's teamwork. That's working together. Good.